Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I am so pleased and honored and excited to have Dave Keith, a leader from GPM Investments on the show today. How you doing, Dave? It's great to see you again.
Hey, doing great. Good to see you too, Kip. So,
Thank you so much. Well, maybe let's start with just kind of your origin story and just kind of background leading up to what you're doing now at GPM and kind of the family office stuff in the past, and just
sure.
kind of share your origin story. What brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, as you mentioned, currently I'm in South Carolina in Greenville, and working for GPM Investments, and took kind of a wandering road to get here, but certainly happy to be where I am. So, I grew up in West Texas and went to school at Texas Tech and got both a bachelor's and a master's there, and never really thought I'd leave Texas. And so, but for several years, many years, I didn't. So I was there for a long time and worked for several different organizations. Lived in San Antonio right prior to coming to Greenville, and worked for Valero Energy there for many years. Left there and became the CFO for Goodwill Industries in San Antonio. So got a little nonprofit background, and then went to work for one of the largest family offices there in San Antonio, Mission City Management, and just loved that gig at Mission City, and loved being with that family and all the different people that we got to work with and things we got to do. Unfortunately, as things evolved and folks in the family matured and different investments played out and ran out and fortunately liquidated, fortunately for everybody, that really became a place where they didn't really need a CFO of my caliber anymore. And so left there, wound up coming here to Greenville, through connections from Valero, back in the energy business. And then we came to work for a company called Transit Energy Group, or TEG, which then got bought out by GPM back in March of 23. So been just kind of
Huh.
wandering, but having a great time along the way. And so I really enjoy what I'm doing now. It's a bit different from where I've been for a long time, and certainly not the family office environment anymore, but it's certainly a great place to be. So,
No, that's fantastic. No, yeah, maybe chat a little bit about just the family office piece in San Antonio, just
mhm.
kind of the inner workings of what all you were involved in there, and
Yeah.
yeah, kind of take it from there.
Yeah, and so it was very interesting. I was hired on as CFO, and certainly one of your prior guests, Kevin
Uh-huh.
Borman, had been the
Yeah.
CFO there, and Kevin and I actually interviewed for that job both at the same time. And they first hired Kevin. Things change, world evolves, and Kevin moves on. And so they came back to me and said, "Hey, would you still want the job?" And I'm going, "Heck yeah, let's do it." So jumped in and had the benefit of Kevin's experience as well as the prior CFO, and just made some great connections there. Kevin and I turned out to be great buddies and worked together in all kinds of ways beyond that. But the family office environment was new for me, but it was a place that I felt like I fit right in. It was a very interesting environment. People would say, "Well, what do you like best about your job?" I said, "Well, you never know what's going to happen on any given day." And it's like, "Well, what's the worst part about your job?" So, well, you never know what's going to happen on any given day. So you may walk in there with a plan for the day, and you might get to work that plan. Odds are you're probably not going to, because something else is going to come, because by nature that office was very entrepreneurial. And then also from a family office perspective, you're also very much taking care of people. And so whatever happened that day was, typically what you needed to do, and you just had to be ready for that. Um, learned learned to survive and thrive in that environment, and actually learned to really enjoy that. So that was great. That particular office was very. We always referred to it as a passion-based equity fund.
Mhm.
So there were lots of investments in particularly healthcare kind of investments that was where the original money had come from that funded the office and all the operations. But that was also the patriarch's passion, and so we still did a lot of that, which was very interesting. I learned a lot of medical technology that to this day is just astounding to me. But one of the funny things, though, is after I'd been there for a while, I grew up on a farm in West Texas and knew a lot about ranching and livestock and all those different things. Had my own small ranch in Texas at the
Hmm.
time, and the family owned multiple ranches across the south and the west there. And once they learned that, hey, Dave knows a little bit about ranching, well, then all of a sudden I became the guy that oversaw the ranches, which was an adventure in and of itself. And so it was just another piece of that wide variety of all the things that I got to do within that office that was really a lot of fun and was very interesting, in its own right. So just never a dull moment for sure.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. How about maybe turn a little bit to GPM? I know like you touched on this there that now you
Mhm.
guys are owned by like a Fortune 500
Yep.
publicly traded company. How does that all, oops, how does that structure work and kind of come together as opposed to where you were before?
So so whenever I came here and we were working for TEG, we were venture capital backed, and we were a roll up and really focused on convenience stores as well as wholesale fuel distribution. A lot of our senior leadership came out of the convenience store industry, came out, they had a lot of background with Circle K and different, big outfits. And we were a roll up, and actually the roll up, we intended initially for that roll up to go many more years than it did, but GPM came along and made our capital partners a deal they couldn't refuse. And so it's like, okay, this is not going to be the 5 to 7 year gig we thought it was going to be. It turned out to be 2. But having come from that background in Valero of being in a large company and kind of learning how to have navigated that back in the day, that gave me, fortunately, the skills to be able to, adapt once more and survive and thrive back in a large company. The difference, really, though, is that GPM operates as a pretty much totally remote organization.
Interesting.
So there are offices across Virginia. We still have an office here in Greenville, but we almost all typically work from home most days, which was a big shift for me. I thought, well, I don't know how to do this. I've never actually had the privilege of doing that except for during COVID. And so that's been an interesting challenge to just learn how to lead and manage in a remote environment. And I was really skeptical at first. Is like, wow, I'm an old dog. This is a new trick. I'm not sure how this is going to work, but it's worked out really well. Learning how to manage my team remote as they're spread out across, the eastern part of the U.S. But a lot of fun, a great organization, just tremendous organization. And I lead a team of just extremely sharp individuals. And so it worked out well for me. And one of the things that I always try to do is as I try to, lead and mentor people every chance I get. And so as we were rolling out of TEG and into GPM, all the people that I worked with, I would say, okay, guys, here's the way I think this is going to go down. You're used to a small company. This is a large company. Here's how most large companies work. You have all these controls and Sarbanes-Oxley requirements and all these things that we've never had before. And so it was a great chance for me to, really mentor a lot of folks in that transition and say, okay, if you want to survive here and thrive, then here's some of the things that you need to think about. Here's the way this environment is going to work. And here's what you can do to adapt your behavior and take your skill sets and go in there and succeed. So that's been really fun to be able to do that because I really love being able to lead and mentor folks and help bring them along in their careers. So
Yeah. No, that's very good. You kind of touched on this right there. Really, my next question, which is
mhm.
how now being in this remote environment, how has your
Yeah.
personal definition of leadership evolved as your, business and career has grown?
Yeah. And so I've really taken a lot of the skills that I used in the office and just adapted them to the virtual environment. So what did I used to do in the office? When I had a question or I had wanted to talk to somebody or had a thought, I was unfortunately the guy that would do what is now called desk bombing. And I just walk down and go, hey, I got this idea, or I heard this, or we know this. And what do you think about this? And love that kind of collaboration. And so typically I kind of do that same thing in Microsoft Teams now. It's like, green dot. Hey, you got a second to talk? And then also, make it very comfortable for people to do the same thing with me because I love to collaborate. Just collaborating is different now. The other interesting thing is in the prior organizations, several prior organizations, whenever we had a meeting, whether it was on Zoom or Teams or whatever, people didn't typically turn their cameras on. And
Huh.
so as I moved into this most recent role, um, most of my team uses their cameras, and I've actually found that to be very helpful in developing
Mm.
relationships and really learning about them and getting them to learn about me, because I'll you know, make a joke or do something funny, and you don't always know I'm making a joke if you can't see my face, right? So so it's really helped just to turn the dang camera on. And a lot of people just don't do that, but I have not all of my team does. They're not all comfortable with it, and that's okay. But a lot of them do, and that's really made a difference for me in building those relationships. So,
Oh, that's very good. How about just kind of what role does servant leadership play in your philosophy and just fostering a culture of success?
so the way I succeed is to help everybody else succeed. And it's not, I have not always had that approach in my career, especially early on. Coming out of college, I was driven, and it was all
Uh-huh.
about me and what can I do for me and my career and the things that I do. And along the way, multiple people poured into me. And they said, hey, you have skills and you have abilities. Why don't you come over here? And along the way, they didn't say, I'm going to tell you how you should do things. They just kind of modeled that for me. And so that's the approach that I've taken at the same time. I've, I've reconnected with an old high school teacher multiple years back on Facebook. And as I watched people talk to her and interact with her, I'm going, oh my gosh, this woman has influenced so many people's lives in such a positive way. And I was going, I wish I could do that. And it was like,
Mm.
well, wait, I can. It's not in a classroom setting, but it's one on one and in, a smaller business setting. And just took a lot of the things that people had done for me, and including my former boss at Valero, Kevin Sheehan, who just completely poured into me. I
Uh-huh.
had a boss at the position prior to that who had come from GE. He had traveled the world and he'd worked in all kinds of places, and he poured into me, and I thought, this is okay. This is what I want to do, and so that's really the approach that I take anymore. It's not okay, what can I do? Where do I want to go? It's like, okay, I'm going to help this person. This person has skills. This person has knowledge. This person just needs some direction. And they don't need, hardline, this is what you need to do direction, but they need that modeled for them. And so that's really the approach now that I've taken. It's like, okay, I'm at the point I want to pour into people just like I've been poured into. And that makes such a difference. Oftentimes an interview question, if you're looking for a job, they go, what's the best thing you've ever done in your career, or one of your biggest successes. And my biggest successes are not systems or processes or financial statements or any of those things. It's the people that I poured into all along the way. Any computer system I ever had a part of building is now defunct because that was years ago and it's been superseded. But every ounce that I've poured into people is, been multiplied a millionfold. And so I still look at people and go, that's pretty cool. I see them and see them succeed in their career. And it's like, in some small part, I had a part in helping them along. And that's pretty exciting. And so now, I don't know how much career I've got left, but I've certainly got a lot less in front of me than I have behind me. And so I really, just that's just become my complete focus right now. It's like, okay, what can I do to pour into these people and to help them? So
Yeah. Any particular practices that you employ to, ensure their ongoing growth and development as you're pouring into them?
So I've really, the other interesting thing about working remote is how do I conduct a one-on-one? Um,
Mm.
and it was funny because as I was working into my most current position, a lot of the places where I worked before, one-on-ones were more of the boss's way to give you a new to-do list than they were of helping you along. And so a lot of what I've done is adapted the way I do one-on-ones. And so rather than say, this is what you need to do, a lot of those one-on-ones are, how's your weekend? The things that you used to walk down catch at the water cooler and say, how's it going? But it's how's your weekend and what's important to you and what's going on in your life, and then how do we help make that happen? How do we help make the things happen that you want to happen? And so it's the I've adapted that one-on-one approach, and it's actually seems to be working out pretty well, because it helps develop the relationship, as well as gives me a chance to very softly say, okay, here's some things, let's work on this. And so it's just been a different approach than I've ever used, and it seems to be working pretty well right now. So
Yeah. No, that's excellent. Yeah. I mean, you're kind of, you know, cultivating this culture. So maybe chat a
yeah.
little bit about just the culture within your organization and how that's contributed to your success.
Yeah, and so there's been organizations that I've been in where the culture is, we kill our wounded. If you
Huh.
screw up, you're probably going down. And so where I'm at today is very different from that. It's like, okay, maybe you made a mistake, or maybe something didn't come out right. Let's go fix the issue rather than go beat people over the head, which has been much more my approach, at least in the last couple of decades of my career, of let's go find the root cause, and let's go fix what that issue is. And if that root cause is that maybe this person doesn't have the skills, or maybe they've got too much workload and they can't really put the attention into what they need to be putting into, or maybe they're just not capable. And if that's the
Mhm.
case, then you got to have to have a conversation about that
Mhm.
as well. But that's very much the culture that I'm in. And I believe in that culture so much. And people are not afraid so much to admit their mistakes now, because they know that they're not going to get kicked in the teeth. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, let's talk. And what I've also started to see in my team is, okay, I made a mistake here. And before they come and confess to me, they come and say, okay, I messed this up, but here's how we fix it. Here's how we keep it from happening again.
Mhm.
And sometimes you don't know that part, and it's okay to say you don't know that part. That's where I can help. But it's most of the time it's like, okay, we're good. Let's go, move on. So put it behind you. So
How about core values? I mean, we just see that as such a key way to, I mean, live out the culture, but just have, strong core values that the company or organization upholds, and then, kind of drive that and integrate that through the operations. Do you guys have, official stated core values, or how do you guys think
yeah,
about
and
that?
and and so a lot of that is very people oriented.
Mhm.
It's really about developing our people, taking care of our people, and really living that out. I've worked for organizations that stated that but didn't live it. But I see that very differently here, thank goodness, to where it's like, yes, we want to take care of our people, and then they actually turn around and take care of their people. So that's a beautiful thing. So and then the other thing is just really finding the best ways to do business. And so very very much focus on business processes and techniques and tools, but in the middle of that, don't become so focused on those hard things that you forget the soft things and don't take care of your people. So you can't, it is possible to actually do both of those things.
Uh-huh.
And it actually works very well and creates a very productive and, a very healthy environment. So,
Oh, very good. How about any, like, just turning kind of straight business, any
mhm.
future trends or opportunities that you guys are seeing in the marketplace that you're really excited about, and then maybe how
so,
you guys trying to
so
position yourselves?
really across the board right now, it's let's figure out, you think about the business that we're in. It's like, well, okay, how does this really apply? But we recently picked up a new CFO. Our longtime CFO retired, and
Okay.
he's come in, and one of his big challenges has been, let's go figure out how we use AI,
Mm.
to advance our business. And then we're all going, we sell gasoline and cigarettes and candy bars and cokes. How do you use AI for that? He's going, y'all go figure that out. So that's the thing right now. It's like, okay, there actually are applications for that. I mean, we really just kind of started that search, but there are so many different ways that can be applied, either on the consumer facing end in the store and at the gas pumps, and then on the backside as well. So, if you've ever been involved in a distribution business of any kind, and certainly fuel is that, there are plenty of opportunities for that, and it's not a place where people have stopped and said, okay, how do we use this? What do we do with that? And it's been great that he's challenged us to say, okay, it's there. I don't necessarily know how to use it, but I'm pretty sure it applies. And so y'all go figure it out. So
Huh? How about just challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing in building and scaling and just kind of moving forward business wise?
and it's like any business that is very has a big acquisition focus. It's just finding the right opportunities. And interestingly enough, in this business, there are tons of them.
Huh.
And a lot of them are smaller. And so certainly with TEG, we had a acquisition strategy where we were looking at what I would call a mom and pop chain. And so they may have 10 or 12 or up to 20 convenience stores and a few, wholesale distribution opportunities. And the family's going, okay, this is great, but we're done. Let's get out. And so, it, does that work well for a bigger company? Yeah, it's just a little bit harder to find them. And it's a little bit harder because a lot of times when you're picking up some of those smaller operations, they're not interested in just getting the cash and getting out. They want to know that you're going to take care of their people.
Mhm.
They want to know that you're not going to, run that business into the ground. And so that's always an interesting challenge to say, okay, how do we make that work for you and for us where it's a win-win?
Yeah.
So the acquisition side is always a challenge, no matter what business you're in. So.
Oh, yeah. So how do you demonstrate to those sellers, those mom and pop sellers, that you're going to do that? We are going to protect your people and not just run the business into the ground.
Well, and so I'm not involved in that part of it in the
Okay.
GPM side of the business, but I do know what we did on the TEG side. And the CEO and the COO were the lead people in a lot of those acquisitions, and they spent a ton of
Uh,
face-to-face time with those people because that's what's important to them. That's the culture that they're in, that's the life that they live, and they spent a lot of time just sitting face to face with them. And then I know whenever we got acquired, the CEO turned around and did the same thing and
uh-huh.
went and said, "Okay, I need to know that you're going to keep these people." And not everybody has stayed long term, but everybody pretty much had the opportunity to come on board if they wanted to come on board. And
Yeah.
so it's really a lot of relationship building, that face to face time to really say, yeah, you can trust me. This is what we're going to do. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, earlier this week, I spent some time with kind of some of the top private equity leaders here in the upper Midwest. And
Hmm.
it was buy side M&A, but they were just talking about how they, as the buyer, want to spend as much time as possible with the owners and the team and
Yes.
the executive leaders to really feel comfortable, like beyond the financial due diligence, just really spend quality face-to-face time with them, and just how
Yeah.
important that was.
Yeah, yeah, and that goes both ways. The team that's being acquired, if assuming they're staying, needs to know that the people that are acquiring care, and the
Right.
people that are acquiring need to know that I'm not going to lose all this organizational knowledge and all of this skill set and all of these leadership and all this talent at the same time. And so, and in a lot of acquisitions, a lot of those things blow up, and especially if you're
Right.
looking at a lot of times if there's an asset purchase and the way that it's structured and it doesn't really look like like they want to keep us, but truth is a lot of times not only do those companies want to keep those people, a lot of times they need to. So
Right.
that's a key part of making that acquisition work. So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. How about any just general, just kind of strategies that have proven effective in identifying and capitalizing on opportunities, whether it's M&A or otherwise?
A lot of that is word of mouth. And so there are a lot of trade associations, and I know when I was with TEG, a lot of the people that we got connected with were part of the state organizations for C stores and for fuel distribution. And people would kind of say, hey, I heard so and so is thinking about selling. It's like, okay, do you have their phone number? So,
Yeah.
or can you introduce me? Or and then with a couple of the companies that we bought as TEG, people would go to the people that we bought the organization from, and say, okay, we're thinking about selling. How'd that work for you? Was that okay? Was that pretty good? And that's a key piece too, to be able, certainly as you treat those people well as you're going through that acquisition, then they give that feedback back to their own network and say, yeah, it worked out well, and you ought to talk to them. So
Oh, very good. How about how have y'all just adapted to major economic changes over the past, 10 years, or just kind of with the two recent entities?
So the fuel distribution and the convenience store business was an interesting anomaly going through COVID, because the people that were still out moving around, that was a an essential business, and it's like, okay, people are still going to work, maybe not as much, and so during that time, fuel sales obviously dropped because people weren't commuting, and so the fuel sales dropped, but everything else kind of went up. All the inside store sales went up because
Huh.
people seemed to be more comfortable, apparently, going into that smaller convenience store setting than going into a large big box store. They, it, for
Huh.
whatever reason, whether they felt like they weren't as exposed to so many other people, but that's what happened. So gas sales went down, beer and candy sales went up, and so it's like, okay, we're gonna figure out how to make this work. And certainly across the fuel industry, it was a shift for a while, but now it's kind of shifting back. To there's certainly, as the economy's recovered from all that and really taken off, that fuel consumption has gone up as well, and so that's been a big piece as things have shifted back to whatever you think of as the new normal. And but the other thing that's interesting there is a lot of the fuel sales that are related to infrastructure and larger scale transportation. So think diesel and jet fuel and those things. That didn't really drop off so much. And so that's actually come on as a more important segment of the business. So as people look to diversify, we have a business, and it's the part of the business that I'm involved in, and it's called Card Lock, and it's basically invisible to a lot of people unless you happen to run a fleet of trucks. And so you don't necessarily want your truck to have to pull into the local convenience store to fill up with diesel. They need a place that's geared towards bigger trucks and industrial fueling, and so that's become a very important part of the model as well. And the sales are there. It's a stronger margin. It's a more, for the most part, stable demand, depending on what kind of businesses you're supporting. We have some of those that support the oil field in West Texas, and so they tend to fluctuate with the oil field as that piece of that business does. But it's a there's a base part of that that's a very steady diesel demand that is a good margin, and it's a nice way to diversify your fuel sale base. So,
Yeah. How about free markets? Like, in what ways has embracing our free market system here in America, how has that benefited the business model?
I have to think about that for a second. So I have to contemplate that one, Kip,
Yeah,
because
or even just or just even like in the fuel business, or
hmm
or in the convenience
yeah.
business. How I mean, how does the free market system maybe impact those specifically as opposed to other industries? I mean, fuel. I mean, that's
So an interesting piece of the fuel business is there are what we call dealers and consignment stores. So
okay.
let's say if an individual wants to own an Exxon store, they can't typically go to Exxon and make a deal. They have to go through a fuel wholesaler like us and like TEG was, because TEG basically is servicing hundreds of these kind of locations, And so in there's an interesting opportunity within that free market to become a branded fuel dealer without having to make a deal with Exxon,
Huh.
because Exxon doesn't want to deal with that either. They don't want a 2 or 3 store chain. They want to deal with a wholesaler and let the wholesaler take care of everything else. And so that particular part of the free market is a really important part. And it's one that a lot of wholesalers are finding is a very interesting and a very enticing part of the business. And so even at TEG, we would say, okay, a lot of these stores, we would say we would dealerize them. So we would sell them to a dealer, but when we sold them to a dealer, that typically came with a 10 or 20-year fuel deal. And so they would be our fuel outlet still, but we didn't have to deal with all of the headache of employees and infrastructure and all that piece. We just sold them fuel and made a little bit of money off distributing the fuel.
Huh.
And so that really is, from a free market standpoint, that gives a lot of people a lot of opportunities that they may not have otherwise. So you don't have to be a $100 million business in order to be in that business, but you can still run a pretty nice branded fuel station or unbranded fuel station for that matter, and still have a really great business. And so that allows a lot of people to get into the business that normally wouldn't have another opportunity. So,
Huh. Very interesting.
yeah. Yeah.
How about, capitalism? I mean, any like common misconceptions about capitalism that you face, whether it's in
S-
business or just in daily life?
And so a lot of times, a lot of folks I run into, especially if they're dealing with a venture capital backed outfit, and I ran into this a lot with TEG because we were, completely venture capital backed. And the perception was, oh, they're going to bleed you dry. They're just going to, squeeze you and get everything they can out of you, because what they're trying to do is, roll it up, get the profit up, get as high as they can and sell it. That's true in a lot of cases, but it's also not necessarily true across the board. So it's another one of those places where you can do both, but you have to be kind of deliberate and specific about doing that, because it's very easy to get focused on that end goal. Hey, we're going to do all these acquisitions. We're going to sell this for 5x or 10x or 20x down the road, 5 years down the road, and lose sight of the human side of that. It doesn't have to be that way. And so that's there for a lot of people. Whenever I was hiring back at TEG, there was that misconception. And it's like, okay, yes, we work hard, but I'm not trying to kill you, I promise. You're still gonna have a good place to work. So
Yeah. Oh, very good. How about maybe just talking about kind of that misconception and just like attracting and retaining high performance leaders into
mhm.
a business, whether the business now or even in that VC setting where people might be thinking this is a quick turn. I mean, how do you really attract those high performers?
So really it still kind of comes back, not kind of, it very much comes back to relationships. And so to me, if I'm hiring people, I want, back to what we talked about before, I want them to know that I'm going to pour into them. I want them to know that I'm going to help develop them. I'm not just hiring them to put a butt in a seat and get work done. And so it's really more about knowing, getting people to understand that they are going to be invested in, and not just by the company, but from me personally. I am going to spend time with you. We are going to work on your career. We are going to talk about your goals and not just talk about them, but figure out how ways to get you there. And so that's really the best way to do that in my mind, and that's what certainly works for me better than anything else.
Uh-huh.
Is just to say, hey, this is not just a job. Yes, I need your technical skills. I need you to be able to do these Excel worksheets and run these different kinds of software and do these different tasks. But, I know you're a person. And by the way, I'm a person too. And we have personal interests. And it's okay that we can talk about those, but I'm also going to be pouring into you the whole time. So,
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. How about like building legacies? We can maybe apply this to the in the family office space and also what you're doing now. How
mhm.
are you working to build like a lasting legacy through your business activities? Or
So,
yeah.
so in the family office space, it was interesting because a lot of my what I considered my legacy was pouring into some of those family members that needed direction. and wanted direction, but didn't necessarily have somebody. They didn't necessarily want it from the family, but they were open to it from me. And it was, just came back to relationship. And a lot of those family offices, those folks are so wealthy. Everybody that's around them, not everybody, but a lot of people try to get around them because they're trying to get what they can from them, rather than trying to pour back into them. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of what they're used to. And so a lot of them were very leery, of anybody. And so, fortunately, spending 10 years in that family office, it took a little bit, but they finally learned to trust me, and then actually seek me out and go, okay, help me with this. How do I do this? I want to do this, and I don't want to just live off daddy's money my whole life. I want to go do this kind of business or do this. Can you help me with that? And so that was a beautiful legacy to be able to, to just pour back into those folks. And, like we talked about with servant leadership, that's really where I want my legacy to be, and I think it is, that carries forward. I help those people. And just like people help me and now I help other people, then the people that I'm pouring into will learn to pour into others. They won't all do that, but a lot of them will. And so that carries on, you know, way beyond, my influence and even my lifetime.
Uh-huh.
And that's the legacy I want to leave. So
Oh, that's amazing. That's very good. How about just kind of looking back at your career? What decisions or actions would you say have made the most impact or been pivotal to your success, or just taking you to
to
where you are now?
A lot of that has just been being flexible,
Mm.
and being open. The biggest thing is being open to just about anything. And so when I was in college, I was working for a couple that had a printing company, and the lady looked at me one day and she said, "You'll take on just about anything, won't you?" And she said, "I've never seen anybody that was just so open to new experiences." And I thought, I don't know. I guess so. That's just the way I've always been. But that openness and that flexibility and that willingness to go take on something new, has really been probably the most important thing above anything else. Whatever skills I have, it's a mindset. And so, like when my wife Tony and I were debating, do we take this job in South Carolina, because we'd never lived outside of Texas. In fact,
Uh-huh.
we had never even thought about moving outside of Texas. And at the time, we really didn't think we wanted to move out of San Antonio. And fortunately, she shares a lot of that mindset with me, and it was like, okay, this is an adventure. Let's look at it as an adventure. Let's make it an adventure. Let's go to South Carolina and let's do everything there is to do in South Carolina. Enjoying the outdoors and all the things that South Carolina offers. And that has just been, it turned out to be a significant pivotal point in both of our lives, both career wise and personal, just because it was something very new, way out of our comfort zone. But it's like, our kids are grown. We don't have a lot to keep us back there in San
Uh-huh.
Antonio. Let's give it a shot. And it's turned out to be just a huge blessing. And it's an amazing place with amazing people, and we've had just terrific business opportunities as well. But without that mindset of, hey, let's go give it a shot, and frankly, I really got that reinforced back in the family office, because that's the way our patriarch was. He was a absolute serial entrepreneur, and he just about never met a business opportunity he didn't like. And so he didn't take them all, but
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he was always fascinated by it, and so was I. And so it's just that mindset has been, just critical, and that even into my new role here, it's been the same way, because I started out in one role, with GPM, and then they came back and said, okay, we have a need over here, and it's not what you're doing today, but we think you'd be good at that. It's like, sure, let's go. And that's worked out beautifully. So,
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, how important to have us, just talking about your wife, just a supportive partner that like is up for some adventure, and like
yeah,
you guys are one, and like let's go do
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. And it's just been, to have that like mindset has been just terrific.
That's
And,
huge.
we've been married for coming up on 37 years,
Oh, congratulations.
36
That's
years. Yeah.
amazing.
And so, she's, you know, followed me around, and I followed her, and it's just been a terrific relationship. So
Oh, what a blessing. That's amazing. Oh, very good. Well, how about we'll do end with one last question. You kind of touched
yeah,
on this, which this is be applicable, just being flexible, but like
yeah.
what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs, people coming up that are aspiring to succeed in today's economic climate and looking to the future? Like what advice would you give these young budding entrepreneurs?
So what the best advice I feel like I can give to any entrepreneur is, you know what you know, but there are things that you don't know. And so you need to get help with those things. So I've seen tons of entrepreneurs go out there with a terrific business idea, but have no idea about business. And so they don't have accountants helping them. They don't have attorneys helping them when they need attorneys. And so a lot of times they stub their toe, not because they don't have a good product and they don't have passion for that, but they don't know how to keep themselves out of trouble with the IRS and the state and the federal government and all those things. And there are all these myriad of mazes that need to be navigated, and they don't even know what the mazes are, much less how to get through them. And the biggest thing I can tell anybody who's an entrepreneur is understand what you know, but go get help with the stuff that you don't, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to admit that you don't know that.
Uh-huh.
So,
Oh, that's fantastic advice. And I got to end with, so when the NCAA Final Four and National Championship came to Minneapolis, I went to both Final Four games in the national championship, but
yeah,
we were at the Texas Tech games. We were in the Texas Tech section,
yeah,
and we had so much fun with those people and putting
yeah.
the guns up, and it was just they were so
Yeah,
much fun, and they welcomed us in,
yeah,
even though we're Minnesota people, but so much
yeah,
fun.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I really, I love those folks. I grew up in that part of the state,
Yeah.
and certainly got both my bachelor's and master's there, and
Uh-huh.
certainly followed that. Was so disappointed when they lost in the
I know.
finals,
Yeah.
but so excited. That's the furthest they'd ever been, you
Right.
know. And so the women won a national championship, several years back.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, gosh, the guys are finally going to get one, and missed it by that much. But
Yeah.
but it was great to see that kind of success, and then they built on that success, even with that coach leaving and a new coach coming in.
Uh-huh.
There's been just a terrific, not just basketball program, but overall sports program. And so that's been pretty exciting to see. But the uh, the folks in West Texas are as friendly as they get, and they're not as maybe widely known for their fanship as UT or A&M, but
Uh-huh.
they are just as enthusiastic. So,
Uh-huh. I saw it firsthand. It was a blast.
yeah,
Well, good. Well, I really appreciate this, Dave. This was fantastic, such an
you
honor.
bet.
And uh yeah, I really appreciate it. And you've navigated family offices and VC and now being held by a public company, and you've kind of done it all. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts
You
and
bet.
wisdom. And yeah, really
Glad to
appreciate it.
glad to do it, and glad to reconnect with you, man.
All
So,
right. Thank you so very much.
all right,
All
thanks.
right.